one bit of advice, could be anything, that you would give, whether it's a candidate looking for a job, whether it's someone looking to grow in their career, what piece of advice do you want to leave for the listeners? Could be anything.
So I think the world is changing so fast, right? We don't know what roles are going to exist in the future. In the next 5 to 10 years, I could not predict what roles are going to exist. So I think for me, it is keep up to date, make sure you know what's going on in the world of work, and don't ever stop learning. It's lifelong learning.
Thank you for listening to the podcast thus far. The one favor I would ask, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, is to press the follow and subscribe button on whatever media platform you listen to us, as it helps us grow our network and grow the podcast. So thank you and enjoy the podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Alchemy Uncensored podcast. Today we are joined by Jen Gillespie. Jen has 20 plus years experience in HR, having lived in the UK, Singapore and Dubai. She has worked across all HR disciplines with a passion for change management, cultural transformation, and people development. Her experience covers diverse industries such as banking, oil and gas, property, water technology, and supply chain. Jen, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Lewis?
Yeah, very good. Looking forward to this one. You've got lots of interesting insights to share, I'm sure.
Yeah, I do. And I'm a podcast virgin, so this is going to be fun.
All right, good. No pressure then. So why don't we start, for the listeners especially, tell us a bit of a snapshot, if you can, of your career.
I'll not give away my age, but I've been in HR for over 20 years. Started in the UK. You can probably tell by my accent, I'm from Scotland. So I worked for Bank of Scotland, HR consultancy there, Royal Bank of Scotland, did a lot around change management, especially when we did the wind down of ABN AMRO. Then I moved to Singapore with my family and I worked in banking still with RBS in Singapore and did a lot around change management there and transformation, did a bit of learning and development and moved to BP, oil and gas, where I looked after the traders and the finance team. Moved from BP to Jones Lang LaSalle property company, and we did a huge HR transformation program. So put in cloud-based HR systems, put in shared service models. And then I felt like I needed a little bit of tech experience and to be a bit more tech savvy. So I moved to IBM and sold change management, would you believe? So when they were implementing SaaS-based cloud systems, I was selling to the client the change management that went alongside that. From there, I wanted to get back into in-house HR. So I went to a company called Xylem, which is a water technology company. And this is still in Singapore. And I was the HR director for Southeast Asia. And with them, moved to Dubai. So I was in Singapore a total of 8 years. Moved to Dubai 3.5 years ago with Xylem and was the HR director for Middle East and Turkey. And then I moved to Ecolog to be the chief people officer. And now I'm actually going to start out on my own and start my own consultancy.
Okay, fair enough. What's the, key difference for me, I find quite interesting, Singapore and Dubai. I've seen a few people recently do the similar move to you where they were in Singapore and then moved to Dubai. What's the key differences, similarities with both cities?
Yeah, I was actually at a networking event the other day with a consultancy firm, and most of the people there who joined had actually come from Singapore. So there's a big influx coming from Singapore to Dubai. And I think the rationale for that is more around the cost of living in Singapore has gone pretty much through the roof. In terms of the nuances between the different countries, I would say, even although this is multinational in Dubai, it feels much more multinational in Singapore, in a way that your friendship group is multicultural, whereas here I think that we tend to stick with our own nationalities. So I found that quite different. And also there's a lot more multinationals having regional roles out of Singapore than what I would say I'm experiencing existing in Dubai today.
In Singapore, is there more focus on the workforce being much larger proportion of locals, right, compared to...
Yeah, they do have quotas in terms of local versus non, and they offer up PR, but you've got to be eligible to have that, which is permanent residence. So yeah, there is a quota there.
Yeah, because I've heard I've not been to Singapore myself, but some people say that Dubai is trying to be maybe like another
Yeah, I think it's
Singapore.
going on the
Have you noticed
coattails,
that?
right? Even if you look at some of the bars like C'est La Vie, right, which is Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, which is the boat-shaped one. The one here in Dubai, they've got C'est La Vie, boat-shaped. So I feel like it's mirroring a little bit how Singapore has gone. So yeah, I would say that's true.
One thing I noticed when we worked together recently, obviously we're finance recruiters, so your relationship with the CFO, that was something that became really apparent to me. You really value that relationship. Tell me a bit about why. What does that relationship look like to you?
The chief people officer and the chief financial officer have to go kind of hand in hand. And I mean, I'm all about people, I'm all about talent and transformation, and I'm all about digitizing the workforce. If I don't have that relationship with the CFO where I need them to actually give me the budget to do so, they're obviously about compliance, risk, ROI. So it's how do we then have that kind of marriage together that says, okay, here's what we're doing, but here's the benefits and here's how I talk your language. And I think that's super helpful when you go into like board discussions, trying to get stuff over the line for the employee, that you are joined with the CFO and you can both go in and get the story over the line.
Do you think do you always manage to get that buy-in, or is that something you've tried and been unsuccessful? Because I know the previous CFO was very open to that, but what happens? Do you ever find that you don't get that buy-in, and how do you manage that then?
And there's sometimes the relationship doesn't go too well because they're very cost conscious CFOs, really focusing on ROI, and like the CPO is focusing on the employee. So sometimes you don't always see eye to eye. I've kind of seen it work really well because it increases your profitability if you're increasing your employee engagement and you're focusing on your talent and your growth. Where it doesn't work well is if the CFO doesn't believe in that whole HR side of it, the people and experience, the employee experience, and how you can enhance that, going digital, how that helps the business. So I think it doesn't work so well in these instances. And I have worked where I've kind of clashed a lot, and it's a constant battle to get stuff done. And then every month when you're looking at the business review, it's an interesting one when it comes to HR being a cost rather than a saving. So it's how do you justify that? And where it's really failed me before is I've put my budget in a company I was in. So I've set my budget for the year. And in that budget, I may have put like graduate programs, talent development, middle manager training. And I've gone along thinking, right, okay, the budget's in, so we've got the plan for the year, we know the roadmap, and I get to go. I'm looking at agencies to use, who do we partner with, and then I'm looking to then put the spend through. And then I realise that my budget's cut, but with no consultation. So that's where it really goes against you in the relationship. If you're not even being told when your budget's cut and you just stumble upon it when you're trying to land your employee engagement initiatives.
Yeah, I think something that we've both discussed and I've observed sometimes is like getting the buy-in of especially the finance staff, investing in them and actually developing them. Sometimes I've seen organisations where it's just hire, low cost, do a job. If they're not very good, we'll bring someone else in and just rinse, repeat. And sometimes it seems, I don't know if it's just in this region, but there is that lack of maybe investment in the team, I guess.
Yeah, my experience in this region is that it's definitely a bit more tactical and operational from what I've seen, certainly coming from Asia and UK, less on the strategic side. Whilst I think they will get there eventually, and it's definitely a shift that has to be seen, it does feel a little bit more operational.
Yeah, okay. And so the role of a chief people officer then in this region compared to Singapore, I'm guessing, is a bit more developed, the UK as well. Like, what's that experience been like, and what do you think the chief people officer needs to be doing in the Middle East?
Yeah. I think it depends on the company you're going into, right? Are you going into a multinational, or are you going into a more local company, and what are their actual needs? So right now, especially going into my own consultancy firm, it is about, diagnosing what do they need. And in terms of the role difference from CPO from Singapore to here, for Xylem, when I was with water technology company, it was a bit of a lift and shift of my playbook. So what had I done there in terms of what did our dashboard look like for people? What was the training program we were putting in place? How were we developing? What was the talent program that we'd written? How did we make sure first line managers were upskilled as well? So just really taking that and repeating it here. But I think when you're looking out in the industry and you're looking at CPOs and I'm networking with them, it's a real mishmash really of capability and what the companies are needing here. Depends on the company, if it's multinational or not.
So it depends basically on, like say, scale and maybe buy-in from the management and etc. So mindset, that's something you've definitely observed, and a difference in mindset, whether it's based on private business versus multinational, whether that's what's your experience been with that?
You need to have a growth mindset to open up to new ideas and really look at how we can do business differently, whether it be from your org design, whether it be from your product development, whatever that may be. And I think here I've certainly witnessed much more of a fixed mindset. So, no, we've always done it this way, this is how we're doing it, and this is the track we're following. Whereas how do we then get them to open up to have more of a growth mindset? And how do you develop that, and how do you really coach for that as well in this environment? So
what's your experience been? How do you coach for that? How do you change that? Because there's resistance to change everywhere. Does it get to a point where you just accept that I'm fighting a losing battle and move on? Like, how do you coach for that mindset shift?
Well, it's an interesting one because we're now 5 generations in the workplace, right? Yeah. So it's actually starting to come in itself, because with the new age workforce coming through, they don't want to be pigeonholed to a job description, and this is my 9 to 5 job description. They actually want breadth. They want to get involved in everything, right? So actually the world of work is moving on, and they have much more of an agile way of working. They want to learn differently. And they want the breadth. So I think that's where you've kind of got the youth coming in. And then you've got kind of more of your old timers who are really needed, really steady. They've got the experience, they've got the miles on them. They can help train on technical sides of roles and how to kind of converse in a work environment. So how do you go from schooling to corporate? All of that stuff is coming. So I think with the 5 generations in the workplace, it's definitely creating much more of the growth mindset. And something that I've seen work really well, and I've actually tested and trained on myself, is looking at gamified learning experiences. So how do you get everybody in a room? How do you create chaos? How do you have this online gaming system where you can see how they display how they are under pressure? How do they display their behaviour? And then what is their report coming out of that session? So there's a lot of products out there from a gamified learning experience that actually brings that out in scenario-based learning, which I've seen work super well. And they go from, like, say there's 4 rounds in the game. They start off with a very fixed mindset. Mm-hmm. You then do a debrief and say, here's some of the learnings that have come out. And then you see by the 4th round how they then have that growth mindset, and they actually complete the game in less than a minute from actually complete chaos and not completing it at all.
Okay, so making it a bit more engaging and fun, I guess.
For sure.
Do you find there's a bit of a clash? I've seen this myself when you bring in like the new era and maybe, like you say, the steady, more senior, experienced people. Like, what's that clash? And how do you manage that?
The first thing I saw recently was one of the graduates coming in. She came into work at 11 o'clock and, thought that was kind of okay. And then, you've got the more seasoned 9 till 5 people saying, well, it's 11 o'clock. It's like halfway through the day. What's happening? But she's actually working maybe on her laptop in the morning, on the bus on the way in, and maybe a bit later at night, right? So there's just a difference in how people want to work now. And it is much more friendly to actually having work-life rhythm rather than work-life balance. They just actually fit work around their life.
Yeah, and that's interesting because now, like you say, people just integrate it into their day-to-day, but I guess there's still that mindset that 9 o'clock, where's X person, where are they?
Exactly.
Do you think that's changing? I think it is, but...
Yes and no. So, I mean, we've still got clock in, clock out systems in some companies, right? So we're recording when you start and when you finish. But actually, what that doesn't show is productivity. You could be working 7 in the morning till 8 at night, but actually, what's your productivity within that window? How are they going to measure that? So there is some still old school presenteeism being reflected in the workplace that I think, yes, is changing, but still has a bit of a long way to go. I think we all kind of go back to COVID helped with that a bit. But again, if you look back to the COVID times when you had no real start and end to your day, it just continued. So yeah, I think that helped break through some of the barriers around home working, flexi working. But I think with the 5 generations in the workplace now, it's going to have to come or you'll be behind as an organisation.
Yeah, we definitely, more and more people, conversations, it's what's the work from home policy, or where can I go during summer? Can I work remote? And
Correct.
We're seeing that more and more. And I do think some companies are slowly taking it on board. It might be one day from home now. It used to be none. But I still think there's a long way to go. But I think that one thing that people take for granted is like people work hard and long hours here, and I do see stories where they're in at 8 and they're not allowed to leave till this time, and it's very like old school mentality.
Yeah, but I do think here it's unique, right? Because when you're saying like people want to work from their home country, it's mainly expats here, right? So actually that's where the difference comes. Whereas in Singapore, you wouldn't see them giving you 3 to 4 weeks to go home and work from UK, for me, for example. That just wouldn't happen. Whereas here it is a huge expat community and it gets to 50 degrees, right? Who wants to be here in that weather? So yeah, that's why it's a bit different here. And then even when you come to the benefits, annual flight tickets home, things like that are not the norm in any other.
It's just ingrained
country.
Into how this place operates, right?
Correct.
So everyone's favourite topic, recruitment.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your experience been like recruiting in this region, right? Because so you're leading a HR function. HR play a very important role in the recruitment process, especially in this region. What's your experience been as someone who's needed to recruit for the last few years?
There is a surplus of people. What I would say is trying to get the right caliber can be quite difficult. Because you get inundated with CVs. So say you put a job on LinkedIn, you're going to have over 1,000 applications, right? And it's super hard to try and work out, I know we can use AI and generate your shortlist, etc. So people tend to fall on agencies, right? Especially for the more senior level roles. But you've got that and you've got to balance but we don't want to spend. So for me, that's been a hard juggle and as a CPO. Like, how do I hire in caliber, sift through the market, for free, and sift through the market and the influx of people and talent that are coming into the country is a difficult one. So what I have tended to do is use agencies who you've got the connects with, who seem to be hot in the market for the particular field that you're hiring into. And then you've got your kind of between 20-30% fees on that.
Recruiting is crazy. It's just your inbox must be flooded with applications. So what can candidates do like to stand out? How can you put your best foot forward when it comes to trying to get a role, I guess? Yeah,
I think blind applications don't work. So for me, I think you need to be recommended and networked. So my biggest recommendation would be to grow your network. Make sure you're constantly up to date. Make sure that your CV is succinct. And actually, if there is an AI tool going through it, that it's going to get through the AI process. But for me, the biggest thing is network. And actually know what you're talking about and have yourself prepared. Not just come in thinking you're going to get the job, because there is a lot of people who I've interviewed who just come in and they haven't even done their background on the organisation. So as soon as you ask them what they know about the company, they don't give you a huge amount back.
Well, they're doing no research.
There's a lack of research, which is standard 101 that you would expect going into an interview.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's definitely not going to change anytime soon. The volume of applications is going to continue to flood through. And I echo your point. These blind applications of just throwing 100 CVs and seeing what sticks just doesn't work. I think you do need to be more targeted. What that looks like, whether that's type of business, industry or whatever. I mean, I think it varies basically on what role you're doing, but HR do play such an important role. So from a recruitment process, another bugbear that everyone has is, I never hear back, a recruitment process took so long, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, to you, what does a good recruitment process look like?
For me, it's following through end to end, right? So yeah, you've got your job advert out, you then get the candidates coming in, whether you have a blanket decline message that goes out, it's even nice to know where you stand in that process. And also, if from a candidate experience perspective, if you are taking them through the process, keeping them warm throughout if they're in your kind of top three, and being transparent about, it's a two-way process, so they've got to learn a lot about your organisation. So making sure that as you're going through, I think we did a recent hire together, right? And my view, how I kept that candidate warm and he didn't go somewhere else, was just by being connected, being transparent where we're at in the process. If there's an extra process that just gets sprung upon you, that you're
very common,
that you're very honest about, like, okay, this has come up, and you walk them through who they're going to meet and give them a bit of brief so that they're prepared. But I think for me, it's following through end to end. So, especially from application to decline or hire, make sure that they've had a good experience working with your company.
Yeah, communication is the key, especially, like you say, it's very hard when you've got thousands of applications to communicate to everyone. It's just not possible. But when you are at those final stages, honestly, the amount of times there's a couple of candidates and you just never hear, the client goes quiet for a week.
Yeah.
And it's like, that doesn't give a good experience. And us as the agency are trying to manage the relationship, and not even we know. So then it makes us look like we're not aware of the situation. So yeah, communication is essential, really. So everyone's favourite topic at the moment, in addition to recruitment, because everyone loves recruitment obviously, packages, compensation, expat benefits. What are you seeing from your lens?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because what's coming out a lot is that the market is now saturated with people coming in, with the way that Europe and UK is going with tax implications, all of that stuff. They're coming to Dubai hoping to land their perfect job, right? So the market is saturated with talent and good, credible people. But what is happening, what I'm seeing anyway, is roles are being devalued. So let's say I was taking an HR business partner, or let's take a CFO, right? Maybe a CFO could commandeer 100K, right? Now they're being devalued to below 80K, because the market is saturated with people desperate to have that employment here and to get their experience under their belt of the UAE, that the roles are being devalued. So that's something everybody's talking about when I'm speaking to them, and certainly a lot I'm reading about in the market right now.
Do you think that's going to continue? Are we just going to have to accept that maybe the differential between the money you could earn and the cost of living is just going to be less than it was before? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. If only I had that crystal ball, but I think it's going to fluctuate. I think it'll have ups and downs. I think when people start in the role without the experience, companies are soon going to realise they might need to pay a little bit more to actually have the regional experience under their belt. So yeah, I think it'll be we'll see it changing for sure. And I think people who have come in that can't land that job, thinking it was going to be really easy to come to Dubai and get their international kickoff, if you like, may start to head back. So
yeah, because the last year especially, we've seen such an influx. People move here without a job. I mean, people were applying from afar and maybe relocating with their firm, but now that's less common, and more and more people, even very senior individuals with families and whatever, are moving here now without a job. So therefore, like you say, they're devaluing maybe what that role could pay because they're willing to take slightly less, blah blah blah. But I'm guessing maybe there will be an adjustment perhaps at some point, whether people leave when they realise that it's maybe not as lucrative as it once was, or whatever.
Yeah, and I think the cost of living here isn't exactly cheap, right? So I think once they start understanding what it takes to break even, and the cost of living here as well, they may make their own decision and vote with their feet. Or more companies are opening here as well. So let's see how the trend goes. But like I say, if I had a crystal ball, I could answer that, but yeah, it's a difficult one to see where the trend's going to go.
So next steps for you then. So you've obviously been in the big corporate world, you've worked in multiple regions, locations, etc. You're on to pastures new. What does that look like? Tell us what's next.
So I'm going to start a consultancy called Change Catalyst Consulting. So this is really looking at end-to-end HR for the whole employee life cycle. So if you need me to come in and look at what are the pain points in the business, is it your organizational design? Do you have the right job profiles? Do you even have a corporate grading structure? What does that look like for costs in the market, for roles? What's your hiring strategy? All of that stuff, to how do we train people? What's your training needs analysis? What budget do you need for the year? Anything end to end from an HR perspective, happy to help with in organizations. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So nice. Hopefully I land my first gig soon. Fingers crossed.
So like I suppose fractional CFO is the equivalent in the world of finance, I guess, where we're seeing a lot of these senior finance professionals helicopter in, work on certain pain points or help with X. We want to go through a due diligence process, or we want to restructure the team and whatever, and you're coming at that from like more of a HR
exactly. So more the CFO would be looking at the cost to serve, right? So actually, what's the cost to run this company? What's our affordability? I would work closely with a CFO on what's the reward structure like for the employee. So do we have sales incentive plans? Do we have long-term incentive plans? Is it a company where we offer stocks and shares? What does all that look like? So that was something I would certainly work with the CFO on to support organizations. And even looking at, okay, so if it's too high, or we're spending a lot on business development but we're not seeing the revenue come through, how do we look at that? And how are we doing business? Where is our leaky pipe? What clients are we looking at? So the CFO and obviously the Chief Commercial Officer as well would be key to look at how we run the organisation from that perspective.
Sounds exciting. Looking forward to the entrepreneurial journey, I guess. Got to be very different to what you've done. Be your own boss. Is that?
Yeah, I know.
Is that exciting? Does that worry you? Or?
It's a little bit scary, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It is exciting. I've never been my own boss, but I'm pretty organised. So yeah, I'm looking forward to starting up and see how we go.
How's the setup process been? Just a kind of a side note, really. There's a lot of people, a lot of listeners, probably a lot of people considering that entrepreneurial journey. It looks like the UAE is encouraging people to set businesses up. You only have to look in the news, all of these companies set up, formation firms, the whole remote visa. What's that been like?
So it's been pretty easy, to be honest. So the first thing, I'm golden visa, okay. So that's super helpful. And then I just have to set up the business license, which I've gone through the paperwork for right now. And then you need to set up your business bank account. And then from there, you're pretty much good to go. It depends if you're setting up as a solo or if you're setting up with employees under you, and which area you want to go for a free zone for a visa or your business license. Where are you going to go? And it's good to use someone who understands all that to help you get set up.
Okay, sounds good. So ease of doing business is definitely high on the priorities, I guess, of the government and whoever is related.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we're going to do a few quick fires, going to catch you off guard because you're not prepared for any of these. So don't worry, it's all good. If you could go to any holiday location, no expense spared, where would it be?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Do you know what? I think South Africa.
Really? Someone else said that recently, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, South Africa's definitely becoming maybe it's just within the circles that I'm spending time, but it seems very common. Why South Africa? Have you been?
Never been. And I just hear so many good things. I've got like a lot of South African friends. My parents have just come back from South Africa. They've been a few times. The wine obviously is very good. So that would be something that I would be interested in. And I think the scenery as well is meant to be amazing. So yeah, I would love to experience that and be with the wildlife, right? Do a bit of a South African wildlife tour.
Nice, okay. Favourite restaurant in Dubai?
Oh, in Dubai.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Do you spend a lot of time in fancy restaurants? Or doesn't need to be fancy, it could be anything.
I do eat out a lot.
Yeah.
I like Koya.
Yeah?
Yeah, Peruvian restaurant.
That do I
At the Fairmont.
Oh, okay. One bit of advice, could be anything, that you would give, whether it's a candidate looking for a job, whether it's someone looking to grow in their career. What piece of advice do you want to leave for the listeners? Could be anything.
So I think the world is changing so fast, right? We don't know what roles are going to exist in the future. In the next 5 to 10 years, I could not predict what roles are going to exist. So I think for me, it is keep up to date, make sure you know what's going on in the world of work, and don't ever stop learning. It's lifelong learning.
Nice. Well, on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining. Hopefully some useful tips for our listeners. And then, we'll see everyone on the next episode.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.